WBUR Podcast, Boston.
I'm Zeninjor Enwemeka in for Daryl C. Murphy, and you're listening to The Common. So, any day now, I'm expecting to get a text alert from my utility company telling me my electric bill is ready. It usually comes around this time every month. But when I pay my bill, apparently my money might be helping fund their political goals? Wait, what? Miriam Wasser, your WBUR Senior Climate and Environmental Reporter, so I'm hoping you can help me understand all this?
Yes, Zeninjor, I am here to help.
Well, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
My pleasure.
So, Miriam, I thought my utility bills just paid for the amount of electricity or gas I used every month. Is that not the case?
That is not the case. Generally speaking, your gas or electric bill has two components. One portion of it is the actual power that you use, and then the other portion is like everything else. So what it takes to get that power, that electricity, that gas to your house. So you're paying for the cost of building and maintaining electrical wires or pipelines. You're paying for the operating expenses of the utility, so employee salaries and office space rent. There's a charge in there for the state's energy efficiency program. And a lot of experts say you might also be helping to pay for some of your utility's attempts to influence climate policy or advance its other political goals.
So how did you know to even look into all of this?
Yeah, so I found this story because I saw other states passing laws to limit this. So earlier this year, I saw some headlines about a new law in Colorado that was going to limit how ratepayer money could be used for utilities' political activities. And then in June, Connecticut passed a similar law, and Maine came shortly after that. So I'm seeing all these headlines, and I just started wondering, is this happening here in Massachusetts? So I started reaching out to people, and what I found is that there is a small movement here. There's currently no bill in the State House that would do anything like this, but the environmental group, the Conservation Law Foundation, they sent a petition to the Department of Public Utilities in May. And the Department of Public Utilities is the state regulator for utility companies. So they sent a petition that asked the department to sort of unilaterally create a lot of these regulations, which the department can totally do.
Okay, so I want to make sure I understand this. So can utility companies just take my money and back whatever political goals they want?
No, they cannot. And I'm glad you asked that because I think we should be very clear about this. There are standards for what your utility can and cannot do with ratepayer money.
Okay.
The Department of Public Utilities right now, they say utilities, when you gather money, you cannot use that for direct lobbying. So they cannot use your money to send a lobbyist to the State House. They can't use your money for campaign contributions. They are within their right to do those things, but if they do it, they need to use shareholder money or the company's profits. But experts say there are loopholes in the status quo. For example, lobbying has a very specific legal definition, and there are certainly things that a utility might be able to do that you and I would think are lobbying or that are, trying to influence politics or public opinion that don't fit the legal definition of lobbying. Other loopholes people talk about are the annual fees that your utilities pay to trade association groups or other nonprofits, certain educational materials. One of the people that I talked to for this story is Ann Berwick. She led the Department of Public Utilities under former Governor Deval Patrick. She said that generally, whether the Department of Public Utilities allows a utility to charge customers for any particular expense often comes down to whether the company can successfully argue that it benefited ratepayers.
That's somewhat troubling to me as a standard. Because it seems like an exception that you can drive a truck through.
Right. There are a lot of things that the utility might be able to say, this is benefiting ratepayers, so therefore we should be able to use ratepayer money for.
That does sound troubling, but I'm wondering, why does this matter? Why should we care about it?
Totally. I'm very glad you asked that question. So I think it's important to just say outright, it is not uncommon for private companies to spend money on lobbying and political activities, and they are well within their right to do that. But utilities are not like other companies. They are regulated monopolies. So if you, as a customer, you don't like the politics of a fast food chain or a bank or any other company that you frequent, you don't have to go there. You can take your money elsewhere. As a ratepayer, you do not get to choose who delivers your gas or your electricity. And so what people who want to change these rules are saying is utilities are well within their right to do political activities, but ratepayer money should not be going to that because ratepayers do not have a choice in who they pay their monthly bills to.
All right, let's take a break.
Did you kill Marlene Johnson?
I think you're one of the first people to have actually asked.
From WBUR and ZSP Media, this is Beyond All Repair, a new podcast about an unsolved murder that will leave you questioning everything.
Somebody should be in jail for murdering my sister.
A woman who's never been believed.
As long as they think I have done this, then they're not looking for who actually did this.
And that's what makes it a cold case.
No, it's a botched case.
And a search for the truth, once and for all.
Wow, it just gets more interesting.
Beyond All Repair. Listen and follow wherever you get your podcasts.
Be careful. You're digging in a place that's been very peaceful for a while.
Do it anyway. Dig.
And we're back. So do we know if companies like Eversource or National Grid are doing things like that here in Massachusetts?
That's a great question. So there are definitely examples in other states where utilities have used ratepayer dollars for like pretty blatant political ends. They're often kind of campaigning against climate change legislation or clean energy policy. I don't have any like specific examples here in Massachusetts, although one that has come up in my reporting a bunch. I don't know if you remember, but a couple of years ago, there was a story about how Eversource distributed these educational pamphlets to elementary school students. They were called Natural Gas, Your Invisible Friend.
Oh, I do remember that.
Yeah. They talked about natural gas as being a safe, clean, and efficient fuel. And they talked about like its many uses in and around the home. There were safety tips scattered throughout the material. And so Eversource has said, this is educational material and we are required to produce a certain amount of public educational material around gas and electricity every year. But a lot of parents and environmentalists were very outraged by this material because, there's no mention of how burning natural gas contributes to climate change or worsens indoor-outdoor air quality. So this is an example of that kind of murky area where, generally speaking, utilities are allowed to use ratepayer money for educational material. But as one expert said to me, it's very easy to slip fossil fuel propaganda or anti-climate change propaganda into educational materials. And, I want to be clear, we do not know at this point whether ratepayers are paying for those pamphlets. I asked the company about this, and the spokesperson said to me in an email, we have an obligation to conduct public awareness campaigns for gas safety, but they basically said we haven't decided whether or not customer money will fund this. So this is an example of something that people hold up and say, if we passed stricter rules, it might be more clear that something like this cannot be recovered from ratepayers.
Okay. So what is being done about this?
Right. So, as we mentioned at the top, the biggest thing right now in Massachusetts is the petition that the Conservation Law Foundation sent to the Department of Public Utilities. They have some language in there that they're suggesting the department adopt that would close some of these loopholes. So, utilities could not use ratepayer money for any direct, indirect, or grassroots lobbying or any other activities that could influence regulation or legislation at any level of government. They couldn't use ratepayer money for any advertising or written materials or any other communications that are intended to influence public opinion and policy issues. They couldn't charge ratepayers for any of the dues or fees for those trade groups or any contributions that they make to nonprofits. So that's sort of what we're talking about.
Yeah, and you mentioned other states have passed laws to address this problem. What do those solutions there look like?
Yeah, so the other states that have passed laws are Colorado, Connecticut, and Maine. I think it was just last week the New York legislature took up a similar bill, and there's some discussion in Louisiana about doing this too. And each of these pieces of legislation are a little bit different, but generally speaking, I think they all do two things. So first, they do what the CLF petition would do, which is they say, here is more explicit language about what you can and cannot use ratepayer money for, right, to sort of rein in the ability of utilities to use their customers' money for political ends. And then they also, importantly, increase transparency. So one of the issues that a lot of environmentalists or ratepayer advocates have with the current system is that it's really hard to know what utilities are spending money on. A lot of this stuff often only comes out during something called a rate case, which is a proceeding that happens like once or twice a decade when they ask for permission to increase rates. And rate cases involve billions of dollars and thousands of pages of discovery. And it's really easy for things to slip through the cracks or to not get reported. And so what these laws are doing is requiring more regular and detailed disclosure about everything that utilities spend money on.
Okay. And have you had a chance to ask anyone from Massachusetts utilities companies about this? And what did they say?
Yes, totally. So I talked to both Eversource and National Grid for this story. They declined to comment on the specific petition, but they both said these laws aren't necessary. This petition isn't necessary. The state already has rules about how utilities pay for political activities, and we follow them.
So what's next here? I mean, what's the way forward?
I mean, I think we kind of just have to wait and see what the Department of Public Utilities does. We'll have to see if they open a docket about this and take this up. It's also possible that we see some legislation at the State House at some point, too.
Well, Miriam, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
That was Miriam Wasser, WBUR's senior climate and environmental reporter. And that's our show for today. Thanks for listening to The Comment. And tell us what you think about your utility bills being used to fund political activities. Are you concerned about it? Don't care? Let us know on Instagram at WBURTheCommon or shoot us an email at thecommon@wbur.org. I'm Zaninjor Enwemeka in for Daryl C. Murphy. Talk to you tomorrow.